All right, guys, let's talk about cleaning up home recordings of the human voice. All right, guys, so I was working on this podcast, and it's basically just an audiobook. So the book is called Doug Stearns is a Zombie. The first episode is the first two chapters, so that's what this is. I'll put a link in the description below. I think it might be out by the time this video comes out. But I just figured this would be a good example for what I sometimes do when I'm cleaning up home recordings, right? So I'll just show you what I did in this instance with this recording. Again, it's going to be different depending on what recording you have and what the source material is, what's coming in, what the issues are with what's coming in. But I figured this would be a good example of one instance. All right, so first of all, let me make this a little smaller so we can kind of see it. So first of all, I have the raw audio here on this track. And so this audio, it was actually recorded using the same system that I outlined in a previous video for my portable sound booth, right? So it's a framework of PVC pipes and then blankets just draped over it. And basically what happened is partway through this recording, the fridge turned on, which was nearby. And so we hear, that steady hum going, which let me see if I can kind of find it. So this is the raw audio here. Let me solo it. Right here. You can hear it kind of going, right?
Chapter.
So we have that hum going. It's not in the intro or the outro, I don't think, if I'm remembering properly. But basically what I did is I took this raw audio, I exported it, and then I imported it into Audition. And I have a video about how to do noise reduction in Audition, so I'll put a card on the screen for you guys for that. But that's what I did, and then I re-imported it, and that's what this track is. So I will minimize that because we're past that point now. And then what I did is I just went through and, I try to kind of maintain a natural feel. If you edit it too much, it kind of feels unnatural. That's kind of obvious. It kind of feels weird, right? So I try to maintain a natural feel. So there are points where they're breathing or where you can kind of hear their mouth moving. You get some of the mouth noises sometimes. I kind of just left some of those in, but there are occasions where I cut those out. So I believe this is an example of that because this is the intro and he pretty much just said the intro. It was kind of more of a conversational thing. So I think that's what this is here. I can play it and we can see what it was.
To normal.
So I left the breath in there, but there's probably some kind of sound. Yeah, so see that? I'm like reconstructing what I did because I don't actually remember every single edit. Surprise. So you see the voice here. That looks like the same word. So let's listen to hear what it was here.
For things to go to normal. To normal.
I have a pre-roll on here. I just did Command K to take out pre-roll. So you can hear that voice. You can actually see it here on the waveform, but there's like a little pop of the mouth. So I went through and I removed some of those, especially if they're isolated. If they're separate from the actual speaking, it's really easy to just remove them really quick. So let me fix that there. I think that's how I had it. Let's listen.
For things to go back to normal.
I might have had it closer to there.
Go back to normal.
Oh, nope. I think I had it there for a reason. So I go through and I do stuff like that. And then you'll notice once we get into reading, there were some phrases that we said multiple times that he read multiple times to make it sound more comfortable and natural and flow better. So you just go through and find those good takes of the phrases. When I actually recorded, I did have a bunch of markers. I deleted most of the markers from recording, but these are some examples here of, when there was a mess up or when there was a good take or whatever. And it's a good idea to take notes on that stuff as you record. So let's see, I did that. So that's how I get all these edit points here. You can see how there are more clips that are separated out, right? So that's pretty self-explanatory. What I'm going to do here, instead of going into my sound design, you can kind of see a lot of my sound design here. I've started to do the sound design for this. Instead of going to that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually talk about what I did to the voice to make it sound a little bit better. Because I know a lot of people are starting podcasts, recording at home, stuff like that right now, especially with COVID and so many people stay at home orders. I think there's been a bit of a boost in that kind of thing. And so I figured you guys might be more interested in that. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. But that's what I'm going to focus on for today, whether that's a good idea or not. You will notice here, though, before I go into that, I do go through and listen to the story after I have the voice edited, and I'll drop markers for ideas that I think might warrant a sound effect or some kind of sound design element. So that is something that I do. And then it's also a good idea if it's a book or if it's something that's recurring, especially if it's creative, to ask them what kind of things are going to be repeated themes in the story. So is there a certain phrase that's going to be repeated, a certain character that's going to say something over and over, because that might then warrant a different type of sound design element, right? A different type of sound design build through time. So that's just an idea that I have. I don't know. All right, so we can listen to this audio. I'm going to solo it so that we don't hear the sound design for now. But you can listen to this audio, and once he starts reading, I think the fridge kind of kicked in pretty early. Ideally, you just want to take the time to turn off the fridge and make sure it's not going to kick in, right? But I figured this would be a good example here. So I think we can kind of hear how it got affected after we did the noise reduction. So you can still hear it, right? But it's reduced. And what I'm going to do here, this is for an effect, so I'm not going to go into these. It's just on one phrase. It is a phrase. It's not just a word. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about these and what I did here. So I'm going to mute these so we can hear it raw.
The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. Rickshaws pulling employees wrapped in black fabric.
So you can really hear how the compressor that I had, I'm pretty sure it's going to be mostly the compressor, actually raised that noise level from what was left after the noise reduction. But it's fine because we're adding sound design, so it's okay. We wanted for this story, we wanted to have kind of some ambient background sounds, so like city sounds, stuff like that. So this kind of noise gets eaten up by that pretty quickly. So that's one of the reasons why we didn't actually just re-record this, right? And turn off the fridge and re-record. So you can hear what the voice sounds.
The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. Rickshaws pulling employees wrapped in black fabric.
So what I did here is I added EQ first. That's what I tend to add first, especially with voice. So I EQ'd out some whistle tones, some stuff that I found frustrating to hear in the voice. So I will play that for you so you can hear the difference, and I will A/B it for you.
The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. Rickshaws pulling employees wrapped in black fabric ties. Cars puttering over potholes and riding the curbs.
So you can hear I really reduced the low end there, right? You can hear that for sure. That's kind of a choice that I made. I might back it up more later and bring some of those lows back in. But especially when you're listening on the studio monitors, it sounds like there's a little too much bass. So that's why I cut out that much so far. So I cut out some bass. You can really hear that.
The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. Rickshaws pulling employees wrapped in black fabric ties. Cars puttering over potholes and riding the curbs.
And the other thing here with the high pass and the low pass filter is I was trying to reduce some of that unwanted noise, some of that fridge noise, and also, setting a space in terms of the EQ where the voice will live, and then letting the sound design kind of live in the other sections of the space. But you'll hear I also did bring in some higher frequencies back in later with one of these plugins. So there's that. But yeah, I'm not sure if I'll bring some of that bass and the voice back in. It does sound very overwhelming on studio monitors when you listen, but most people are listening to podcasts on like phones and stuff. Some people listen in the car, which can have a decent amount of bass. So it's just it's a consideration. It's a give and take with like everything audio. So next I did a de-esser. So I will A/B this one so you can hear the difference. But this is just, it's a de-esser. It's to remove those kind of harsher frequencies that are often associated with the sounds in the voice. So let's see.
The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. Rickshaws pulling employees wrapped in black fabric ties. Cars puttering over potholes and riding the curbs.
So, I added that in there. I do that with pretty much every voice that I edit. I will add some de-essing. A good idea if you're working on music or something, especially, is to automate your de-esser. I've gotten into doing that. I like that. I don't know. Some people might not like that, but you can automate it to change it a little bit, as time passes, depending on what's required. Other than that, I really like the Fab Filter plugins. So that's pretty much the only one that I use nowadays is the Fab Filter de-esser. And that's just my personal preference. That's what I like. And then this plugin, I love this plugin. So I've used this a lot before. If you've seen my other videos, you probably have seen this plugin, but it's kind of similar to a de-esser in a lot of ways. And it's basically just, it's trying to cut some of those harsher frequencies. So, it says right here, it's a harshness control. So, yeah, I'll just let you hear what I did with it.
The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. Rickshaws pulling employees wrapped in black fabric.
Here, I'll loop it so you can really hear the difference here.
The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush.
So that cuts some of the harshness, but then, it sounds a little murkier. It sounds a little more like underwatery, and you can hear that I've significantly reduced the upper frequencies here, right? Between the EQ, the de-esser, and this refinement plugin. I've actually chopped a lot out of this voice, and it's more than I normally would do. And I think part of that is because I was trying to mitigate this fridge sound. So basically what I've done, I'll talk about the compressor really quick, but then I've added this fresh air plugin back in. So I'll show you the compressor. And so this is just to kind of, even out those dynamics. The human voice has a crazy dynamic range. From word to word, from syllable to syllable, we're very up and down in terms of dynamics. So I always put a compressor on the human voice to some extent. Sometimes it's milder than others, but to some extent. And then also with a podcast, we're doing, we want to get it to a standard loudness, right? So between the compressor and then the limiter that I have here on the master fader, this is a very subtle limiter. You can see I'm just doing a little bit here. But between these two, I'm just kind of trying to bring it up to a more standard level, right? So it doesn't surprise anyone with how loud it is or how quiet it is. So I will play this. I'll loop this again for you, and I will let you hear it with and without.
The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work.
So it's a pretty big boost that I'm adding. You'll notice I'm not doing a ton of actual compressing, right? So it's bouncing around between the -1 and -2 area. I don't want to do anything too extreme because this is just, it's a podcast. We're not really doing it for an effect necessarily. But yeah, that's what I did here. So then what I did, I mentioned this earlier, I cut out a lot of those upper frequencies, made it sound a little muddier. So then I tried this plugin out, and this is a new plugin for me. I think it's actually I think it's one of the Slate plugins. I'll put a link in the description, I think, for you guys to as many of these plugins as I can link to, I guess I might as well. But I believe this is one of the Slate ones, and it was introduced a little while back, but I'm kind of slow with these things sometimes. So it's new for me. So I was just trying it out, and I thought this would be fun to show you guys. So this is one of the big reasons why I'm doing this video specifically. So you can hear how it can be used in a non-musical context. I don't know if it's kind of obvious how we use it in a musical context, right? It kind of helps the voice kind of sit and shimmer on top of things. But I'll play it for you guys so you can hear before I start rambling about how it sounds. So I'll play it for you.
The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. So you can hear how it kind of brings the voice up and makes it more present in the mix. Not that there's much of a mix here because it's just the voice, because we're not listening to my sound design. But it does bring it up a little bit more, makes it a little more present. Bringing up those upper frequencies kind of makes it feel a little more in your face, I guess, right? And I can play with it for a second so you can kind of hear the extremes of this plugin here. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush.
So it's, it's too extreme when you push it to the limits, but you can kind of hear what it's doing there. It kind of helps make things pop a little bit more and bring some of those upper frequencies back in. So I'll play it one more time with all the plugins and then without any of the plugins so you can hear the two.
The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush.
And then I will mute these.
The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush. The city speeds around him in the pre-work rush.
So yeah, that's what I did here, for better or for worse, I guess. So let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I would really appreciate all that stuff. And I do have a Patreon, so it's patreon.com/CatoNoise, and we have additional content on the Patreon. We have a Discord server. We just started a book club. It's pretty fun. So if you want to check that out, it's patreon.com/CatoNoise. And other than that, I come out with new videos every Wednesday, and thank you for watching. Okay.